I went from chaos to calm. And once I started feeling this calmness, everything started to align. Like
Yeah.
all my thoughts and my
Yeah.
energy started to align.
Yeah.
And that's what's allowing me to be a better father,
Okay.
a better husband, an
Okay.
attentive business owner, is the fact that I went from chaos to calm. Now everything's aligning to where like I need to go.
Hello, and welcome to another episode of Master Plant Talk, a podcast about master plants. I am your usual host, Tyler Hurst of Microdose.yoga. No Scott Stanley today, but our guest today is Andrew Lunsford, who I haven't met in person yet, but I've heard amazing things from his experience at the Veterans Weekend that our last guest, Rich, did integration work with. So, Andrew, could you give me a little bit about who you are and just what makes you come alive?
Yeah, sure. So, like I said, my name is Andrew Lunsford. I'm a Navy vet. I served primarily as a FMF medic in the Marine Corps. So the majority of my time in the Navy was as a medic in the Marine Corps. I got out in 2000 after receiving an injury. So kind of what makes me come alive is a lot of knowing that I'm growing as a person, personal hobbies. I like to stay active because I believe that kind of stimulates the mind as well.
Yeah, very cool. Very cool. Now, I would like to know what brought you to ayahuasca in the first place, because it sounds like you've been out, 19 years? You've been out of the
About
service?
that, yeah.
Okay. Because I know that what first brought me to ayahuasca was a story about a wartime photographer who never actually saw combat, but just saw the aftermath of combat. And he had what he didn't understand at the time was complex PTSD and not like regular PTSD, if that makes any sense. I mean, all PTSD is essentially complex.
Yeah.
So I'm curious, in between your time of being discharged in 2006 and 2024, when you attended the Veterans Weekend, what steps did you take to help yourself to deal with just the mental trauma of serving?
Well, so the time I got out until about, I would say 2022, I did nothing to help myself.
Okay.
I slipped into very severe alcoholism with a pill addiction as well. I got 3 DUIs. I got 2 DUIs within like a month.
Whoa.
So yeah. So there was absolutely nothing I was doing for myself. How my journey of healing began was through some friends that are a lot tougher than I am. I reached out and asked for help, and right afterwards, I regretted I did, because they, no kidding, helped.
Yeah.
So they showed up to my house and kind of brought me to the hospital, and they put me on a 72-hour hold.
Okay.
Then after that, I went to drug and alcohol rehab. And I had some slips after that every once in a while, but it wasn't until I met my now wife. She is a big proponent of nonprofits. She does a lot of the marketing for nonprofits and stuff like that. And so she has a ton of resources. So I was still struggling even after I went to rehab, because there was a lot of things I hadn't figured out at that time.
And this was in 2022, you said?
2022 is when my journey began.
Okay.
It was probably the beginning of 20, midway through 23. So she started kind of disenrolling me on my behalf, doing the applications, enrolling me into programs. One of the programs she found was, Hero Cars Project, and she found some other nonprofit organizations. And then she found the I Mission 22. So it's Ulysses. She rolled me into the program, and she said, "Oh yeah, by the way, you're going down to do ayahuasca in Arizona." And that's
And
where
you're talking about this last November.
Yeah.
Okay. Or was November? Yeah.
Yeah. And I've done psychedelics in the past for mental health reasons. Like I've done ketamine treatments, and I really liked the ketamine treatments, but it doesn't have the same impact as like, let's say ayahuasca and ibogaine and stuff like that. So, but it did help me. It helped that 180 start, I guess.
Yeah, from what I understand, I've tried ketamine, but I've never been on a ketamine treatment plan. From what I understand, it's really good to like stabilize you.
Yes.
So if you're in deep throes of suicidal thoughts or suicidal ideation, and you need something that works right now that doesn't take as much integration time, you don't have to prepare as much for a ketamine treatment as you do for an ayahuasca ceremony. So that's what I've seen. And that's sort of what you experienced. It maybe didn't cure you, but it definitely helped you stabilize enough so you weren't getting worse.
Yeah, it made me
Okay.
kind of realize, like, hey, you got a severe alcohol problem.
Okay. Okay.
So it kind of, I mean, I always knew I was an alcoholic. I mean, through all drinking, I knew that, hey, normal people don't drink a handle of whiskey a day. What it helped me realize is that, okay, this is a problem, this is a problem, but this is something that you're not going to be able to live with much longer. Because I had all my PSD with alcoholism and Adderall, and it was,
So
uh,
you were desperately trying to self-medicate, but you knew it wasn't working.
yes.
But you didn't know any other options. So this is going to get a little personal, but I'd like you just to share just some. You don't have to do on details, but when you say you're having issues and you say you needed to drink or you felt like you needed to drink or whatever else, like how does that manifest? Because a lot of times we think of people in war are going to have what we consider typical PTSD, or people who have served are going to have typical PTSD flashbacks. They're being shot at, they're being actively chased, they're fighting for their lives type of stuff. But I know that that's not all of what PTSD entails. Like there's much more things to that. Could you share maybe an instance or a couple of things that made you realize like, hey, I'm not okay and this isn't normal at all? Like what made you want to drink or what made you want to drink to excess all the time or whatever? What drove you to this?
Boredom.
Okay.
So that really is a big trigger to my PTSD is boredom.
Okay.
So I would start feeling bored, and then I'd start drinking.
Gotcha.
That was the everyday cycle. And then kind of another way I knew that I was kind of going back to what you said is just I'm great at self-sabotaging and sabotaging relationships.
Okay.
And so basically boredom left kind of led to the drinking, but also kind of led to developing new relationships. And then I would self-sabotage those relationships. I would keep drinking just because, you start getting into I don't need them anyway. I'm just this is all I need is my bottle, and so.
Now, I'm not going to ask how many broken relationships you went through because we don't need to get into that. But so did you try therapy before? Like was the VA any help? Were they able to give you something to sort of tide yourself over? Or is that something you didn't even consider?
Oh, they tried, but I mean, I'm not the type of vet that's going to bash on the VA. I mean, kind of it's free medicine.
Well, you earned it, but yeah.
Yeah. But the issue is it's gotten a lot better now, but especially when I was in the throes of my mental illness, it was just all about medication. So they would just throw medications at me and not really even knowing if it was going to work. I think at one point they had me on 2,800 milligrams of lithium.
That's a lot. That's bipolar disorder. I've taken that.
Well, exactly.
Not 2,800 milligrams worth, but
yeah. So I mean, this is what they were doing though. They were like, oh yeah, this depression, it's bipolar, it's, schizophrenia. It's like they were going through all these different like things. And then, so at one point they had me on 2,800 milligrams of lithium. And then I went to a civilian doctor for something and I forget what it was. This was 15 years ago. They were basically like, that's a lethal dose of lithium. That's a lethal amount of lithium. You can't be on this much lithium. And then I showed them the bottle and they're like, yeah, no kidding. You can't be on this much. But at the same time, they were also prescribing Adderall by the mountainful.
Take the edge off. Yeah.
So I was on lithium, Adderall. I was on, I forgot Seroquel and just all these different medications that they were just throwing at me. And that's at that time how they treated mental illness. I received very little talk therapy. The only talk therapy I received is I'd go into my my psychiatrist, and then all of a sudden he'd put me on a 72-hour hold. So the only talk therapy I would get was the time from when the social worker came into his office to get me with the VA police. They would talk to me. They would kind of do some little talk therapy with me. And that was pretty much it at the time. So it's just gotten much better since then. But
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
so literally, I was self-medicating. I was doing what I thought the VA wanted me to do with taking my medication, but really what that turned into was me abusing my Adderall.
Yeah. Which is easy to do.
Exactly. So I'd go through a 30-day supply and, anywhere from 7 to 10 days. And then I would just go in and say I lost it, and they would write me another script, and it was just wash, rinse, and repeat every month. I would get,
and that's just what kept you going. I'm assuming.
That's
like
what
without
kept me
that,
going.
without that, you'd have been a puddle on the floor.
Exactly. Yep.
Yeah. Okay.
Because I was drinking a handle at night, and then I would take a handful of Adderall in the morning to kind of wake up. And eventually that just turned my brain into mush because it was constant ups and downs. And
now, during this whole time when you were on the medication, did you have an idea? And I'm sure hindsight's obviously 2020. But did you have an idea that it wasn't working? Like it wasn't like none of the stuff was doing what you knew it was supposed to, or were you just sort of? I mean, I don't want to say stoned, but you were just sort of out of your mind with it. Did you even have the opportunity to even consider that it might not be working?
I'm sure that there were times that was the case, but I was on such of an animalistic, like survival mode, kind of that living in my crocodile brain, so to speak.
Okay.
So I'm sure I've had the realizations every once in a while that I don't remember having them. I don't remember a lot of the last 19 years, to be honest with you. But I was just on survival mode day to day. I mean, that's how I lived my life. I didn't know if I was going to be around the next day, so that's kind of how I lived. And I would say about 15 of those 19 years.
Yeah. So when did you meet your wife?
I met her probably about 2 years ago. And so I started my recovery journey before I met her, but I met her probably 2 years ago. And then we just recently got married in December.
Okay. Congratulations.
And she was really the one that kind of my guiding light into all these different, not, your typical, like, hey, let's go to see a psychologist. Like she introduced me to the different programs, Warrior Path, Boulder Crest, Warrior Week, the Aya mission, as like alternative things. And those things are really what got me to the path I'm on now.
Okay. Okay. And so did you heard about all of this essentially from those groups? Did the groups, you tried ketamine, that worked temporarily, didn't make you worse at least. Was cannabis ever something that you got into? Did that ever help you, or is that not something that was on your radar, or would the VA not allow that?
It was just something I would abuse.
Okay.
To be honest with you.
Too easy to abuse. Okay.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
I mean, I did edibles for a long time.
Okay.
And it was just like the Adderall, the alcohol. I started doing it and it helped. And then it was just like, then next thing you know, I'm taking, 100 milligrams at a time of edibles.
Okay.
So that's my personality. I start something and I get addicted to it.
So were you able to work? Are you living off of Army or Navy disability checks? Like how did you keep yourself like supported and going through all this?
So I worked here and there. I couldn't maintain a job. My my MO is like I'd get a job and I'd do really well because I'm a very intelligent person and I do have good work ethic, and I would make it up to like management, and then all of a sudden I would just like I do with relationships, I self-sabotaged it because it's easier to predict the outcome of things with self-sabotage.
Yeah.
Because, I was afraid of the future, what's going to happen in the future. So it's like, hey, self-sabotage, and then I'll be able to predict the future.
And you kept starting over. You got good at starting over,
exactly.
And so and so. And that felt normal because we stick to our normal, however bad that might be.
Exactly. So I was rated, I had a 70% disability, but of course I'd blow through that. And then, then my dad is, he's retired now, but he's a successful engineer, and so he made good money. So they supported me here and there. And I'm just being 100% honest. But if it wasn't for my parents, I mean, for hiring the lawyers when I got in trouble to, doing these different things, I would have been either in prison or dead.
Fantastic. They believed in you that much. I mean, not just loved you that much, but believed in you too.
I think a
Yep.
lot of it too was, and this is just being honest, is manipulation on my part and playing on their emotional strings and maybe a little bit of, what do you call it? Enabling,
Oh
like,
yeah, yeah, yeah,
um,
yeah.
but they were just doing what parents do. Like when they love their child, it's like, hey, he needs our help. And
Yeah.
I feel
And
bad for a lot of that. But
yeah, I mean, it's not like you were taking their money and going gambling in Vegas, right? You were trying to feel better. Now, not necessarily you weren't may not be doing the right things to feel better, but you were trying to feel better. You
yeah,
weren't going out
yeah,
and blowing money on stuff.
yes, yeah.
Okay, so 2022, you call your friends, they come grab you, start you on this process. They introduce you. I'm assuming that's what got you to ketamine in
So
that time.
I did ketamine before that.
Okay, even before that. Okay,
Yeah, so before that, I did the ketamine. I used to be part of a motorcycle. I won't say which one, but
motorcycle.
a part of a motorcycle club. And then I left because they actually put me on a no drinking, which I don't know if you know anything about that, but I was like, so a motorcycle club put me on a no drinking.
That's
And
tough.
so eventually I called them and I said, hey, I'm done. And these guys that helped me were also former members of that club. They have gotten out. So the whole story is I I was outside of my house. So me and my neighbors were partying in the cul-de-sac, and I'd gotten into and there's a story behind it, but I gotten into a physical altercation with one of my neighbors. We had been drinking, I'd been doing pills, and so after the altercation, I said, I'm going home. You're my neighbor. I'm not going to fight you. So I walked into my garage and I started tinkering around. I like to do woodworking and stuff like that. So I started tinkering around with some woodworking stuff. And then I turn around, I hear this loud bang on the trash can. And I turn around and it's my neighbor with this huge, comically big pipe wrench coming at me. And he was going to smack me over the head with it. So I had my pistol next to me at the time. So I pulled my pistol and I put it dang near in his mouth and I pulled the trigger. I didn't have a round in the chamber. Which that's the exact reaction I have every day when I think about that. So the next day, I called my friend that I was in this motorcycle club with. I consider him my brother, and I said, I need help, and he said, you got it. And
Good
then
for
he
you.
started pulling all these strings with Wounded Warrior Project. There was
Yeah.
a senator involved at one point because the first thing he did was he took me to the 72-hour hold, or first
Mm-hmm.
he took me to the VA, and the VA was
Mm-hmm.
like, we can't see him for another 8 weeks. And my
Okay.
friend was like, he doesn't have another 8 weeks.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, and then that's when he put me on the 72-hour hold, him and some other people. Then when I was on that hold, they contacted Wounded Warrior Project. They contacted all these different people. At one time, a senator was involved to try to push the process to get me into rehab or to get me into some kind of
Uh-huh.
dual diagnosis facility.
Uh-huh.
Finally, next thing I know, there was like something like 38 different rehabs all across the country willing to scholarship me. So the one that we ended up choosing was in Texas. And so this guy brought me down to Texas, didn't have a place to stay. So they flew us down. He rented a car, drove me to the facility.
Wow.
I didn't know this until like a year later, and it still touches my heart. But
Yeah.
he didn't have a place. So there was no hotels with any open hotels within
Yeah.
like 200 miles. So he ended up sleeping in the Walmart parking lot until he could get a flight home. But
Oh.
that's how much he believed in me.
Wow.
So that's how my journey started.
Okay. Wow.
Yeah. So
Can we take a second? I just want to breathe really quick because the energy coming off of you is amazing, but it's getting to me, and I'm sure
yeah.
you get a little. So I'm gonna do a breathing exercise. We do 3 of them. I'm gonna breathe out like I'm breathing through a straw, and I'm gonna fill my belly up, and then I'm gonna sigh out. I'm gonna do 3 of
Sure.
those. If you want to join me, cool.
Sure.
If not, that's fine. So
Yeah.
sit straight up. I'm gonna breathe out through a straw, breathe in through my belly, and sigh. Breathe out through a straw, fill up my belly, and sigh. Last time, breathe out through a straw, breathe in through my belly, and sigh. Okay, thank you for that. That's a fantastic story.
I no longer own a pistol, by the way.
Wow.
So
Wow. Good for you.
I
I mean,
made the
good for
decision
you.
to, I don't
Yeah.
need that in my life. So
you're just not safe. You're just not safe with it. And if you're not
yeah,
safe with it, then you
yeah.
shouldn't have a gun.
I'm sure
Yeah,
I'd be
that makes
fine
sense.
now, but
Yeah.
it's just something I don't need to deal with, and
Yeah, I
it's something
totally,
I choose not to have.
totally get it. And if you need one, you can always go to a range and rent one, and you have friends and all that type of stuff. And yeah, totally get that. Okay, so it is 2022, and you've gone to rehab. You've been through rehab in Texas. How does your life change? Does it, I mean, you meet your wife sometime after that, I'm assuming, right around there? Okay, so your life changes enough that you're able to meet a partner that is able to give you the help that you need, and you are at a place where you're able to accept it and hopefully not sabotage it?
Right.
Okay.
Right. I came back to Colorado, and what I found is, like, I quit drinking, and I had, like I said, I had a few slips, but nothing changed. Like, I was still living in I was still exhibiting my toxic behaviors and that stinking thinking.
Yeah.
So it being in rehab gave me enough time to detox from the chemicals. It makes me realize that, hey, I can't necessarily do these chemicals anymore. But I still had a big component that, I wasn't mentally right though yet, because the rehab is a great place to go. But if you're not working on the other piece of it, which is your mental health, then it's kind of like, you got dry, but you didn't get sober. So there was about a year of that, and that's when I met my wife, and I kind of slipped it back into drinking a little bit, and then she was like, no, 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 we can't do this. This is something we can't do. And then that's when she started kind of getting me into these programs. And so I started finding out about ayahuasca and ibogaine and Bufo and stuff like that.
Yep. So in this time in 2023, you end up, or maybe early 2024, you met Ulysses with his Aya 22. It's Aya 22, isn't it called? Aya Veteran 22. Aya Mission 22. You meet you meet him. I'm assuming online, not in person quite yet, because you're still in Colorado and he's down here.
Yeah, so she applied for the program. I got accepted, and then that's when I started having the conversations with Ulysses and the different other people in the program as well.
Okay. And then I haven't been through that program, not a veteran, although I was at Ulysses' first Aya ceremony
awesome.
Years ago.
That's awesome.
That's how
Yeah.
We've connected really well. Yeah. So you learn about this program. What happens then? Are you immediately just invited to the next Aya ceremony in November? Does he tell you about what's going on? Like, what's the program like before you end up going to ceremony, or is there any part of it?
No, there is. So they do integration meetings in groups before the meeting. So they do 4 groups. So once a week, where everybody that's a part of that particular ceremony gets together, and Rich and Ulysses is a part of it, and they kind of go through, what ayahuasca is, what it can potentially do for you. They go over dietas and kind of get into it, like, physically and spiritually. So when you go to ceremony, you're just prepared for it. So they definitely do. And then obviously there's medical stuff questions they ask you to make sure that you're safe and you medically can do it.
So in this time between rehab and meeting Ulysses and going to the Aya ceremony, are you are you using any other plant medicines? Using mushrooms? Are you introduced to Bufo or anything? Or are you still sort of, drinking a little bit but then stopping? Are you doing anything else in this time besides going to meetings, or are you just dry?
So I would say, like, for the most part, I was dry, but then I was introduced to Bufo. So I did 2 Bufo ceremonies, which are very intense.
What was that like? I've done it, but I want you to tell me what it was like.
It's like being force fed through a fire hose. It is very, very intense. As you know, it only lasts 15 or 20 minutes, but when you're under the influence of the Bufo, sitting with the medicine, it is very, very intense. So, like, at first it was very, like, they said that, I was shaking and I balled my fists up, and then they kind of talked me through it. And then finally, kind of at the end, it kind of got a little bit better. But the second time I did it, once that anxiety and fear, kind of consumed me, I I made this conscious decision. I set the intention before the ceremony to let go, to surrender. And as soon as I did that, it was just a very pleasant experience.
Yeah.
The
Yeah.
colors were very vibrant. Sounds were, I could hear the birds. I could hear the,
Yeah.
the wind rustling the leaves. And it was just so like peaceful. And
Cool.
so those were kind of my experience with Bufo. And it really helped me realize how much I love my wife. And then like in between then and the ayahuasca, I was kind of microdosing with mushrooms as well.
Okay. A quick aside for somebody who's listening who might not know what Bufo is. Bufo is 5-MeO-DMT. It's naturally derived 5-MeO-DMT from the horned toad down here, Sonora horned toad down here in Arizona and other places. It's a similar, it's called the God molecule, while DMT is the spirit molecule. DMT is the hallucinatory part of the ayahuasca brew. And it's said to be, Bufo is said to be 6 to 8 times stronger than regular DMT, which I'm sure you would agree with, because I mean, I could definitely tell the difference between the two is similar, but there was definitely a difference. There's also, you can either take the natural from the horned toad, or you can take synthetic 5-MeO-DMT are options. There's various reasons for doing those, but I'm glad you had that opportunity. Okay, so you tried Bufo. Do you remember when that was? Was that 2024 or was that 2023?
That was 2024.
Okay, 2024.
Yep. Is when I.
So you take Bufo twice. It's funny because I've done it twice too. My first time, it was hellish. The second time was pure love. Like,
Yep.
What?
Yep.
It was great. It was similar. As soon as I let go, everything sort of felt better, which is weird because usually I'm used to holding on to everything. Okay, so you go through Bufo, you notice that things are seemingly getting a little better. If maybe your behavior's not changed, but your outlook on life is improving, I'm assuming.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Definitely had it cracks the doors open. And then I kind of realized that, wow, there is things out there that are so much bigger and stronger than me. And if I can kind of try to harness these things, or at least understand what they are, I think it's just a whole new lease on life.
Okay.
So.
Okay, so it's 2024. You are married. You are working part-time. Are you full-time? Are you still job hopping, or has that steadied, or are you not working at all at this point?
I was working full-time. I had a
working full-time.
Job.
Okay. Like one job, or you work on are you like a contractor or freelancer working on your own?
Well, so it was one job, and then I also moonlighted at another job.
Okay.
Days a week.
But you're gainfully employed.
Yes.
You're doing the stuff. Things aren't getting worse, at least.
Right. Yep.
And then, so then you come upon this opportunity to sit with ayahuasca. So how did Mission 22 bring that up? Like, what was not that there was a pitch, but what was the explanation? Why do you think it was really clicked? Please talk about like your intro to it and the come up to the ceremony.
So my intro into ayahuasca was, again, these same friends that kind of helped me get sober also would travel to Costa Rica to do ceremonies. And they were like, basically, once they did it, they were like, you would be the perfect candidate for this. At that time, this is probably 2023, is when I started hearing about ayahuasca and benefits of it. And I knew that I wanted to do it, but I didn't know anything about it. And then, like I said, it wasn't until I met my wife, and she, like I said, she has immense resources, and she's the one that kind of knew about this program, and she's the one that.
Oh, what a cool lady! Your wife sounds awesome.
She really is. She's phenomenal.
Good work.
She's the one that applied and all that stuff, and that's when I started having conversations with Ulysses and the different people in this organization, and they kind of got further in depth with what ayahuasca is and how it really can help and stuff like that. So, and then with the integration meetings, that kind of went further into it. And,
yeah. And so those integrations meetings were what you said, once a week or once a month?
They were once a week.
Okay. So those started in October, I'm assuming?
Yeah. So they started a month before the ceremony. Okay. Yeah.
Okay. So you're going through integration meetings, you're working your job, you're being a husband, doing all those things. Then the ceremony comes up, your opportunity to go down there. You're headed down there. What are you thinking? Like, I know we're told not to have expectations, but obviously we have some sort of I have an idea what this might be. I don't know. What are you sort of expecting to happen in going there?
Well, at first I thought it was going to be like a cure-all. Because depending on who you talk to, people kind of describe it as being a cure-all, and which is a very, very effective tool. You still need to work. at it. So my expectation was it was going to be a cure-all. And then I guess when I went down there and started doing my ceremonies, I realized that if you just treat it like a high or a trip or whatever like that, it's not going to, I mean, it's not going to do a lot for you. You know, you have to realize that when you set your intentions and stuff like that, I mean, you know, there's so much more than just doing a shot of ayahuasca than enjoying the trip. Because as you know, it's not the most pleasant thing in the world.
No.
But there are good parts of it, though. I mean,
Oh,
there
yeah.
are beautiful, like,
Yeah.
forward parts of it.
Yeah.
And then, so when I did my first ceremony, that's when I realized, no, there's a lot I have to do as well. So I guess that was when I went down there, that's what I thought it was going to be. Then I realized, no, this is what it really is.
Yeah, I went to Peru for the first time in September, and one of the shamans said that they use ayahuasca as a diagnosis tool and also to remove blocks, but it doesn't actually fix anything. You have
Right.
to do all that. And I was sort of like, oh, I never thought about it that way. Even during the shamanic training, they only use ayahuasca like every 3 months because that's just to show where they are, which is really interesting. Okay, so you're there on your first night. You're with a bunch of other veterans. All right. So, I mean, there was probably, 40 people there that weekend? 30, 40? I mean, it was pretty packed.
Well, there was,
I mean,
there were 20,
plus
there were-
staff.
yeah. So there were 22 veterans.
22 vets. Okay.
And then and the reason they picked 22 veterans is because on average, there's 22 veterans that commit suicide every day. So it's kind of a significant number. You know, that's why they picked 22 veterans. But then there were also dependents as well. There were and dependent is a word that we use for significant others in the military. So like if I were still in the military, my wife would be considered a dependent. I just don't want to offend anybody out there by
Yeah,
saying
it's just
that.
it's a legal phrase
Yeah,
or
it's a
term
legal
for
phrase. Yeah.
the army. Yeah, makes sense. Or
So there
for armed
was,
services.
yep. So there was the veterans, there were dependents, and then there was staff, and then so it was very packed.
Okay.
Uh,
So wait, did your wife sit in ceremony, or did just the veterans sit in ceremony?
we so one of the things that somebody told me the summer before, I went to it was called Operation Homefront. It's done through a nonprofit, special forces nonprofit, but they do a weekend where it's just couples therapy almost.
Okay.
And that's
Yep.
so what they suggested when they kind of were going through their thing is like, hey, your first ceremony, don't go with don't go with a significant other, because you want to be free. You know, you don't want to have that like, oh, she's sitting right next to me, or he's sitting right next to me. I don't want to say this. I don't want to act this way because I don't want to let any skeletons out of the closet. So it kind of hampers your experience. And then they said after that, so you do yours, she does hers, and then maybe you guys come around and do one together. But you should always go single at first. Well, that's kind of what I did, and how a lot of vets there kind of took it as well.
So the other vets in the ceremony, did you connect with them? Are there any stories that really stood out to you? Or did it feel like you were sort of all in a similar struggle, just with different details? Like, what was that like to be around people?
So it's unique, like the relationship that you develop in the military. And excuse my language, it's it's the same shit, different stink. So no matter what branch you're in, you always find common ground. Like I could go into a room and identify who the vets are. Then even if I've never met them before, then all of a sudden we're like, we've known each other for 20 years. That's kind of how it was there as well. We all had different kind of combat experiences. We had different experiences in the military. Some people deployed, some people didn't deploy, but we all had that commonality between each other. And that's what made it easy to be with them.
So your ayahuasca experience. So this was, how many times did you sit before you came into this weekend? You sat a couple of times?
Not with ayahuasca, with Bufo.
Not ayahuasca. Okay. So, okay. But you sat with Bufo, you sat with ketamine, and tried mushrooms or whatever else. So after the first night, you realize you have to get to work. Like that's what this is about. What was the second night like then?
So the second night, so when I came out of the first night, in between the first and second ceremony, I just had killer anxiety. So I talked to Scott and I talked to the shaman, Scott, and we sat down, we talked about it a little bit. And I talked to Ulysses and kind of had waterworks going on a little bit. And he was like, I was like, I don't want to do a second ceremony. Like, I don't want to feel this. Like, this is not what I want.
And then they talked me into, they didn't talk me into it, but they were like, you know, you should really get back in there and do it again. Like, let's keep on this, let's exercise the demon, so to speak, you know? So the second night was I would say psychologically was the most beneficial night I had. So, you know, you go in, you know, you have your place where you lay down, and then you sit in the circle and kind of, we go over what's going to happen, and kind of, we do the tobacco water and smoke cleansing and stuff like that. And then you go up, you do your shot. And as you know, it doesn't kick in right away. So with it being 10 o'clock at night, you know, you're pretty tired. So I would do my shot, then I would fall asleep for a little bit before. And then when I wake up, then boom, I'm in the midst of the ayahuasca.
It's a helpful thing to wake up to.
Yeah. So but the second night, and this is going to be kind of a little graphic of a story. And I don't want to offend anybody, but so I fall asleep, and that's when I had my vision. Like, it was a true vision, because I was in a completely different universe. I was in a basement of my parents' house. They'd never owned this house. I was just in a basement, but I knew it was their house. I could hear everybody around me purging. So I could hear everybody around me. So I knew I was conscious still. So I was in this bathroom, and, you know, in my vision, I started, I'll just say, masturbating. And I wasn't
Weird.
actually doing that in ceremony, but
But
yes.
that's funny, because I was in ceremony 2 weeks ago helping, and there was a guy who said almost the exact same thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I laughed, and he goes, "I'm not actually doing it." And I laughed because it was like, so not absurd, but I just didn't think about it. But he said he's having sex with himself. It was the words that he used.
Yeah.
I thought it was really funny, because I could tell he wasn't actually masturbating. But okay. Yeah. That's interesting. Okay. Yeah.
So I was in the bathroom doing this, but I could hear everybody purging. So I wanted privacy. Yeah. So in my vision, I went into this different room. I think it was like a laundry room or something like that. I forget exactly what it was. And I went to go turn on the light. And as soon as I turned on the light, this Nosferatu like creature grabbed my arm and bit me. And then he like sucked me into like this other place. And I'm flying through the air, and I'm trying to fight him, but it was like, everything was so slow, and I couldn't fight him. And it was just this big thing. And then finally I just let him do his thing. And then I kind of went out of that vision. Well, I didn't understand what this vision was, and I talked to Scott about it, and you know, he brought up something that totally makes sense. It's like a porn addiction, you know, because the sexuality of masturbating, whatever, and then and trying to do it, then, you know, the Nosferatu monster. Well, that was the addiction.
Yeah,
the porn addiction. Like, what it taught me was that, well, first you have to let go, you have to surrender to it, because you're not going to be able to fight it. You have to surrender to it. But it really kind of, it just, you know, opened my eyes. And since then, I haven't even looked at porn. I haven't having the urge to look at porn or anything like that. So that was like the biggest thing I took out of that particular ceremony. So it was eye opening. And kind of what it taught me was that, you know, having these type of addictions, other than chemical, but these type of addictions is a destroyer of relationships, intimate relationship, because it will rob the intimacy out of your relationships. And, you know, so ever since that ceremony, that particular vision, like, my wife and I have found real intimacy and
right. That's, I mean, that's cool. I mean, that's not cool, but the end result is cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's a podcast called Evolutionary Man that talked about the energetics of porn. There was a researcher who used a bunch of mushrooms and then watched porn and then like talked about, recorded how he felt and all that. It was a similar experience to, I mean, he was a little more academic about it, but similar experience to yours of, he didn't realize how bad it was. And he also he also believes that way more men, and it's usually men, some women, but way more men are porn addicts than we realize, just because it's so easy. We've grown up with the internet, or, you know, access that type of stuff. We don't even think about it, because to us, it just feels like a fun, you know, harmless thing to do. That is fascinating. Yeah. The Nosferatu thing. Jesus. And all that happened when you were laying on your mat.
Yes. Yep.
Okay. And you weren't like even walking anywhere. You weren't standing up. You weren't outside.
Nope.
Wow.
I could hear everything going on around me. Like I said, like, my vision was in this vision, but like I could hear everything, people purging and talking and kind of screaming, whatever, you know, I could hear the music playing.
Yeah. Have you purged at all? I mean, by purge, I mean, I don't mean necessarily using the bucket throw up. Have you sweat? Have you been shaking? Have you been sneezing? Have you been like mucus coming out of your nose? Have you had any sort of purge yet?
So my purging consists of, I wasn't a puker.
Yeah,
I didn't
not
purge
everyone is.
away. I yawned a lot. My eyes watered profusely, and the snot just kept coming.
That's my go-to one too, is yawning and leaky eyes or whatever you want to call it.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
That was my version of purging. Then I bottom purged a couple times. I had the diarrhea like twice. It wasn't like a huge issue, but there was probably like within like an hour and a half of taking or drinking the medicine, it was to the porta potty.
Yeah, that's pretty normal for almost all of us, unless our diet is absolutely perfect, which it's never going to be.
Yeah. So,
okay.
But I was never a puker.
So first night you went through some stuff. Second night you talked about the porn addiction. So you wake up Sunday morning now. You came back, like you realized like you need to come back. Are you glad that you stayed Saturday night? Are you excited now for Sunday night? Like, where is your head at this point?
I was so glad that I stayed for the second night. Okay. And I was so excited to do the third night. It was very, and then my third night was like rainbows and pixie sticks.
Okay. And that's very normal. Yeah. Usually Friday's the tough night, Friday's the purge night, Saturday's the work night. And it sounds like you basically did a version of that. And then Sunday. So you talk about like beautiful, like Sunday. Did anything stand out? Like, let's share a good story. I mean, did you see like Rainbow Bright? Did you see My Little Ponies on unicorns, on rainbows? Like what was it like for you to have a good experience, a fun one?
Well, I felt love the third night.
Felt love. Okay.
So I felt
that's
like a very like overwhelming sense of love, people around me, for myself. But what the third night really brought to me is, I believe in a higher power. I believe in God. I'm religious. And again, I'm not trying to offend anybody, but talking about religion. But the thing that conflicted me about this whole thing was, people talk about Mother Aya. They talk about God. In my head, I was like, but we're taught in the church not to worship false prophecies. So I'm like, is Mother Aya a false prophecy? Like, is she like something that we shouldn't be worshiping? But then I realized that, and this was all in my visions, this is all in my hallucination. But what I realized is Mother Aya and God are all the same person. They're the same thing. So when you're praying to Mother Aya, you're praying to God. And at least for me, this is for me. It might not be for everybody, but for me, it became all the one person. So instantly that reservation went away. It's like, I'm not worshiping a false prophet. I'm still worshiping the person I worship, but they told me what Mother Aya and God told me is like, we're the same person.
Okay. Just in a different, presented in a different form, in a way that you needed in order to understand. Yeah.
And then as soon as that happened, like these lights and the ceiling of the yurt started rotating and opening it up, and like these like brilliant lights came through, and it just went straight into my chest, and it was just like bursts of love coming out. This light was coming in, love was coming out. It was pretty phenomenal.
Wow, you opened your heart chakra. That's what that is.
Yeah. Yeah.
Do you know, so was there a light of color, or was it white? Was it green? Was it all type of color? Was there anything that you remember about it, or was it more just an experience and a feeling?
It was an experience and a feeling, but it was also like, when you watch Wizard of Oz with Pink Floyd, like you get that, like the feelings, and you get the experiences too at the same time. It was kind of like that in a way. It was nothing like that, but kind of how everything comes in together, like it plays together, is kind of what I experienced. Like, so the lights coming down. And it wasn't just one light. It was brilliant white lights. It was a very happy color lights, greens and yellows and light blues and pinks and stuff like that.
Now, did you have any interactions or anything with the music that was played during ceremony? Was that something that helped you purge? Was that something that helped you notice beauty? Was there anything that stood out from you musically?
So the music just kind of like guided me in my experience. It just kind of, put me in that 540, kind of just like that guiding, like, it's funny you mentioned that, because after I had this experience with the lights and stuff like that, I got up and I just started dancing with everybody. Like we just like went around in the circle. We were just dancing the whole time.
Yeah.
two of my buddies, tattooed from face to toes, like these guys that in their past life, they were pretty raunchy fellows, right? And we were all like had each other by the hips and we're dancing around and and then like the girls that were playing the men and women that were playing the music joined us, and they had the drums and the guitar, and the different instruments, and everybody was laughing. Everybody in the yurt, like the energies caught on. Everybody in the yurt was laughing, and we all got up and started dancing. Then we went out to the bonfire. We came back, did the same thing. It was just such a beautiful night.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That is really cool.
Yeah.
So that happened. I mean, I'm assuming it's almost starting to get light out at this point. It's end of ceremonies ending-ish. I mean,
I would say
by this time, have you had the water? Have you had the basil water?
So we did that before ceremony. We didn't have the basil water. We had the tobacco water.
Well, yeah, usually they in the metal cup, they sometimes bring around a water for everybody during middle of ceremony. I don't know.
No, we didn't have that. No.
Didn't have that. Okay.
No. But it was probably like halfway through the night when everybody started doing that. So everybody kind of experienced what they were experiencing at the beginning of the night. And then like just halfway through the night, everybody just kind of relaxed and just everybody got together. And it was such a beautiful thing. And then obviously, so you do your first shot, then I think an hour or 2 hours later, he rings a bell for seconds and thirds and stuff like that. I did a second shot my third night, but my first and second night, one shot was plenty enough.
Yeah, a lot of people think that the more ayahuasca you take, the higher you get, and that's not true. I mean, sometimes you need a little bit more, and sometimes you need a little bit less, but like the amount you take doesn't usually coincide with the amount of like experiences you have.
And the second night I had too. So when I had the conversation with Scott and I said, this is what I'm feeling, he was like, well, let's change up the ratio a little bit, the vine to the leaf ratio.
Yep.
See what that does for you. And then, yeah, that was the answer. That was the key for me.
Did he give you more vine or more leaf?
He gave me more vine.
Okay.
Than leaf.
Yeah. I actually prefer that too. Although the leaf is what gives you the visions. For me, the vine it's much more beneficial because all the stuff stuck in my body. Like I like seeing pretty things, of course.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
But I can get high anytime I want to.
Yeah.
I want the vine part. Okay, so you've danced in apparently some sort of conga line of sorts. You are now headed back to your bed to sleep for just sort of experience the last couple of hours of ceremony. What happens at daybreak when ceremony ends? What are you feeling? Like what's happening now?
I just felt much more open. I felt more open, more receptive. It's kind of nice. Like I was so excited to get home too. So that's kind of what I remember about like a little bit of that. And then we all kind of helped clean up and stuff like that. I think overall, like to this day, we're kind of talking about like a realization is, besides, the porn addiction, my biggest takeaway from that ceremony was, I can identify different emotions. Like I can identify what they are.
That's awesome.
I can identify love. I can identify anger. I can identify sadness. I can identify all these different emotions and I know what they are. And once you can identify what they are, then you start mitigating your reactions to these emotions.
Yeah.
Because you know what they are. Like you're not getting anger and love confused. You're not getting sadness and happy confused. Like it kind of like really kind of puts them in a box, not a bad box, but it kind of, compartmentalizes.
Yeah. Compartmentalize. There we go.
Yeah. Different emotions and you can kind of deal with them better. So that's kind of what it did for me.
Okay.
For that. I'm doing another ceremony in Peru in March 1,
cool.
1 through the 7th. So
very cool.
I'm hoping it'll just be a continuation of what I experienced the first time.
It's I'll tell you, it's stronger.
Yeah.
And my first night in Peru, my first ayahuasca night in Peru. So I was there for 2 weeks. Our first sit was I think Wednesday night. We got there on a Sunday.
Okay.
I was ready to leave after that morning, not because I was done with everything, but because that one ceremony was so powerful that I figured I got everything I needed. I was like, I'm good. It was really cool because it was different because you don't realize like how much of the issues you're facing come from just living in a world that's not really built for humans. Like we're in cities and pressure TVs and electricity and Wi-Fi, and you don't think it's a big deal until you go to someplace like the jungle where there's none of that and you realize like, oh my God, I feel so much better.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's awesome. So you are Monday morning, you are recognizing that you can identify emotions and you can work on instead of reacting to them, mitigating them a little bit. You're excited to go back home. You fly or drive back home to Colorado. You're home when? Monday night or Tuesday?
So the same day.
Okay, same day.
Yeah, same day.
What's it like with your significant other? What's it like with your wife at that point? Does she notice a change in you? Are you noticing change in you? Are you just nonstop talking to her, telling her how much you love her? Like, what's happening here?
The love connection definitely got a lot stronger. Our intimacy connection grew huge after that. So it was just like, I couldn't stay off her type of thing, like, and vice versa. So the intimacy definitely grew. And when, I noticed when I tell her I love her, like, I'm just not telling her that, like, that's how I feel. And I never did that before the ayahuasca. I knew I loved her. I mean, why wouldn't I? She does all these great things for me.
Yeah.
But it wasn't until after the ceremony, it was like, no, I feel it in my heart. I feel the energy. So
How?
yeah,
That's
I
cool.
spent so much time in the past of boxing all that stuff up and putting it away because, in a way, in the past, you could have called me a sociopath because I didn't feel feelings. It wasn't that I didn't allow myself to feel feelings. I just didn't feel feelings. So if you were crying, I would be like, I wouldn't understand why, like, or I wouldn't care why, like, it's okay. But I would play the role like, oh, what's wrong, buddy? But I really didn't care.
So I do have a question about that. Rich talked about dealing with trauma in our last episode, and he talks about dealing with trauma from the military. And basically he said that his trauma didn't start in the military. He goes, because well-adjusted people don't sign up to go to the armed forces. Usually it takes some sort of person, in a crisis, needs money. And I'm not saying there are people who sign up, maybe you did, so sign up just to serve their country. Great. But a lot of them enlist because of reasons they really can't control. So is there any point where you started to realize, like, it wasn't just your military experience that made everything a struggle, or is that something you're still working through? What's that like?
It is. And I just want to first off say that, like, I have wonderful parents and a wonderful family. We moved around a lot.
I mean, that's traumatic on its own.
Yeah.
No matter how perfect it could have been.
We moved around a lot, but pretty much from, ever since we started moving, which was we moved from Nikiski, Alaska when I was in third grade to Jakarta, Indonesia. And I went from a small podunk school in Nikiski, Alaska to one of the biggest international schools in the world.
Yeah. Wow.
I was bullied relentlessly, pretty much from that time all the way up to high school. I was relentlessly bullied. Were evil, like just this nasty stuff. Kids could be pretty cool. I love my son and I love children. I'm a huge advocate for children, but children can be cruel.
Yeah. Children in groups. Yeah. Especially.
So a big reason of that was because my education in Alaska was good. I was up to the standards in Nikiski, Alaska, but I was 2 grades behind from these kids in Indonesia. So they thought I was, mentally handicapped, and even my teachers made fun of me.
Jesus.
I had this one Australian teacher, Miss Hamilton was her name, but I remember one time I got malaria, and so before that, we all had to bring in water cups to stay hydrated. So you had to bring a cup in from home so you could drink water throughout the day. And I brought in a plastic cup that was yellow. So one day I get malaria, and one of the days I was gone, they were painting, and she took my cup and put yellow paint into it. And then one of the other children was like, well, what if he doesn't see it? Like, what if he gets sick? And she's like, well, that's the point. And she would, like, make fun of me in the middle of class. So not only did I have the teachers or the kids making fun of me, I had the teachers making fun of me as well. So I had come in. So there was no safe place for me.
No.
And school. So the only safe place I had was this, my science and math teacher was from England, very like Mary Poppins, like she had the worst temper in the world, but she took me under her wing. That was my only safe spot in school, was this strict teacher from England. But it didn't get any better when I got back. It was because I was good at being a chameleon and surround or kind of
fitting in,
camouflaging myself and stuff like that. But I would everything would be good for a month, and I would just start getting made fun of again. And it was just that's how it was all the way up through high school.
Yeah, I mean, that's highly traumatic. People don't. I mean, that's essentially emotional. It's emotional abuse, and people don't realize, especially if it starts from a young age, like how debilitating that can be.
I was getting mentally, emotionally abused. I was getting sexually abused, physically, all from the kids in school.
All from the kids, yeah. Which and it probably seemed, I hate to say this, but like normal to them?
It
Like
did.
it was just,
It
that's
did.
just how things are?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, I'm not
remember,
saying like they would, sexually assault me, but they would
no.
pull my pants down and
Yeah.
hit me in the penis with
Yeah. Our
objects and
big
stuff
one,
like that.
our big one in junior high and high school with the finger in the butthole type thing. Like
Yep.
guys would walk
Stuff
up and
like
you're like,
that.
what the? And I didn't think of it as sexual abuse at the time because I didn't understand what it was, but I know it just felt like shit. Yeah. Yeah. Kids in groups are dicks, or kids in groups can be dicks, especially if they don't have the coping mechanisms to deal with whatever they're going through. They take it out on somebody. Okay. So holy shit. Okay. So now you are back. It's the week after your ceremony. You're realizing your trauma isn't just from the military, but, obviously the military exacerbated it, or you just didn't have the emotional and mental and spiritual skills to deal with stuff, which is why you turned to drinking and all that type of stuff. So you're back. Are you meeting with Rich now for integration calls? Like, what's the next step in that? Did that happen after ceremony?
So Rich, we did 2 or 3 integration calls after ceremony, and that was our time to kind of digest. And we also did that too, like the morning after the ceremony, we would sit and talk about kind of what we experienced and stuff like that. It's kind of a double whammy. We would do it right afterwards, kind of that immediate triage, I guess. And then once we got home, we had our weekly meetings as well.
Okay. Is there anything that really stood out from those, or those are really just more maintenance than anything else, and they're required? Did anything really stand out? Is there anything any takeaways that you enjoyed from it, or that you learned about it for yourself or other people?
What I enjoyed is like my progression after the medicine was a lot like other people's. That's when I realized that, there's still a lot more trauma in there that I need to, and stuff that I need to fix. And from those integration meetings, I realized, well, maybe I should do another ceremony. Kind of further dive deeper into what's going on. The porn addiction, that was the surface.
Yeah.
But, my childhood, the military, I worked for the coroner's office for some time. That's a big one, seeing teenager. I had an 8-year-old that killed himself, that I had to go pick up from the hospital.
Oof.
So a lot of trauma there, but none of that came out during this ceremony. So I'm looking forward to, kind of dealing with that stuff down the road. But during the integration, though, to go back to your question, during the integration is when I realized that, okay, yeah, it definitely brought stuff out that needed to come out, but there's more I still need to work on.
Yeah. Now, did you but you felt pretty accomplished after the ceremony? Did you feel like you really, like a sense of, because I know that one of the problems with the trauma, with trauma for a lot of people is no matter what they do, they don't really feel any better. They don't feel like they did anything, that they got high, or they completed rehab or whatever else. But with it sounds like you may have felt accomplished. Like, did you feel like you did something good for yourself and good for other people?
I feel like, honestly, my feeling of it is it put me on the right path.
Okay.
I feel like I am on the right path. I don't know where that path is leading, but
Gotcha.
I know it's the right one.
Okay.
I don't, in a sense, I mean, that makes me feel accomplished, but I know that there's still a lot more work that I need to do. I'm by far not fixed.
Gotcha.
I probably never will be, but as long as I have the coping mechanisms and the tools in my toolbox, that's okay.
Great. Yeah. So back to the Wizard of Oz, I mentioned you're on the Yellow Brick Road now. You don't know where the Yellow Brick Road is taking you. You don't know what is next or who you're going to see on your journey, but you're at least going in somewhat the right direction.
Perfect analogy.
Okay. So you're back in Colorado. You're loving on your wife. She's loving on you. Things are going well. Work-wise, what is anything changing? Are you seeing work differently? Are you approaching work differently? Do you have more confidence now? Or is just the cosmic, chance, are things opening up for you? What's changed, if anything?
You're asking the perfect questions, because yes. So when I got back, and this started before the ceremony, but when I got back, it really
ayahuasca does not work in linear time. It always starts before the ceremony.
We started our own company. It's a fire mitigation land developing company.
Who's we?
My wife and I.
Okay, wife and I.
My wife and I. So she has a business mind. Like I said, she owns another company that's wildly successful. She does marketing. And so we decided, like, hey, this is something I've always wanted to do. So why don't we, we have the money to do it. why don't we do this? And we did. And, it's taken off like a firecracker. It really is. Like, we're doing really well. And part of the reason is because fire mitigation is a huge subject right now in our country.
Yeah.
Because of California and the wildfires that we have, there's a lot of prevention we could be doing that we haven't done yet.
Okay.
And so that's where my company comes in. We kind of, go in and do this fire mitigation. But the motivation, the dedication, the know-how, like all that stuff came from it came from me, but ayahuasca opened up like, hey, you can do this. Like, this is something you can do, but I'm going to put you on the path you need to be on, but you're going to have to do it yourself. All the effort's going to have to come from you.
Yep.
You can actually do this. And so that's,
yeah, there's a cool phrase that someone told me once, that ayahuasca in particular, and a lot of psychedelics, plant medicines, especially when used appropriately, they don't teach you how to do anything new. They just help remind you or remember who you are.
Exactly.
So like, there's nothing you're doing now you couldn't have done 3 years ago, but you weren't able to like process it to keep it going and all that type of stuff.
Exactly.
So this company is it sort of, so your wife's good at the business type stuff. Is she like mostly management and you're mostly labor? Like, is she going out and getting new contracts? Are you pitching new contracts? Like, has your demeanor and approach changed, or can you like do sales now better than you did before? Like, how does that work?
Is she, so she does a lot of the, I guess what you call the office stuff,
Office stuff, admin,
admin,
operations.
She's, because being 100% disabled, eligible for certain government programs through the SBA and the service disabled veteran-owned small business and stuff like that. So she's putting all that stuff together. So she's the one that's putting the applications for that. She's the one that did our website and our social media and all that stuff. What the ayahuasca has taught me to do in that process is be there for her, supporting her however I need to get that stuff done. Now, the labor and the machinery and the outside sales stuff is stuff I do.
That's right.
And so what the ayahuasca showed me is kind of helped me find that confidence to where I can go talk to a guy that's a millionaire with all this property and look him in the eyes and sell him a job.
Okay. Great.
So that's kind of where I'm at now with that, is having that confidence of looking somebody in the eye and even doing this podcast really too. But that's kind of what that has taught me.
You're doing fantastic, by the way. This is really fun. I'm enjoying myself. So I do have another question. Is there any accomplishments or contracts or anything that you've landed that you want to talk about? Anything in specific?
Yeah. So
I heard a mention of one store contract. I don't know if that's. I'm curious if you'll bring it up. So
a part of my so I was telling you, Ulysses. So a part of our company was also transportation, hotshot loads.
Oh yeah.
But we realized with insurance and stuff like that part of it is something that we're gonna kind of circle back around later, like down the road. But we need to really kind of segment our business and really work on a piece of it before we start adding other pieces. But with that part of the business, I had the opportunity to meet the CEO of Home Depot.
Whoa.
A great guy. And he, him and I were texting like for a good half a day. Like I'm texting the CEO of Home Depot.
CEO of Home Depot.
Like going back and forth on text.
Whoa.
He put me in contact with the CEO and then also the transportation chief, and to try to figure out like, hey, how can Rocky Mountain, Land and Fire and Home Depot work together? Like, how can we be a team and work together? And so at the end, it didn't really work just because it was like our insurance would have gone up by like $18,000 a year or something like that. So it was like, this is something we could definitely do in the future.
Yeah,
but
once
like right now, it's kind of backed up.
Yeah,
but being able to have a conversation with him, transportation and stuff like that, that was definitely something that helped me accomplish.
That's cool. Okay, so now let's say, and just as a role play really quick, imagine you 3-4 years ago. When would you have started to self-sabotage yourself in this process? Would you have ignored his texts? What's changed now? What do you know that's different about you?
Like he would have 3-4 years ago, like I would have given him such weird energy.
Okay.
that he probably would have just not wanted to even communicate with me again. So scatterbrained and just not being able to really finish sentences or thought, forgetting what kind of where I was going and changing the subject, just to the point where somebody's like, yeah, this is not somebody that we want to get into bed with, or do business with.
Yeah, so you're just basically better at grounding and regulating yourself. I mean, that's really it. Again, you're not doing anything different. You're just reminding yourself of what you're capable of and doing. So
Exactly.
that's got to be a cool feeling. No, were you when you were talking to him? Were you anxious? Were you sweating? Was that, or were you just like,
not at all?
Wow,
not
really?
At all. Like I was talking to him like I knew him for like 20 years.
Oh, wow, that's cool.
And what the realization I had is he's a person just like me, and he's just another human being. Like, there's no reason why you have to be nervous.
Okay. Yeah.
And that's kind of like the mentality I had. And it was like, I wasn't nervous at all. I talked to him like you and I are talking right now.
It's fantastic.
Yeah.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
If we have a little quick tangent switch, if you want to talk about this, you said you have a child.
Yes, I do.
How old are they?
So I have one son. His name's Oliver. He lives with his mom. We have 50-50, but
so he lives nearby. He lives close to you.
Oh yeah, like 7 miles away. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Nothing, not too far away. And we have a great relationship. Him and myself and his mom have a great relationship now. And for a long time we didn't, obviously, for obvious reasons. I was doing the biker, drinker, drug thing, and that's not conducive to a marriage. But one thing I can look back to is now, and this is another thing that helped me, is like everything that went on between her and I, like, was 98% my fault.
Yeah.
And I think, like, once I realized that, our relationship went from not being very amicable to being like, hey, let's raise this child together. We're not together, but let's raise this child together.
Okay. So,
and we still have struggles here and there, but I mean,
course.
You're always going to have struggles.
Of course. So do you notice that you are different towards your son now after going through all this? Just as an example, do you feel differently? I mean, obviously you still love your son. That's not going to change, but like you are showing him how to heal. You are the example of it. Do you think about fatherhood any different now? Do you, not that you wish you'd have done something different, that's not what I mean, but does any realizations that come from that, like anything at all?
I am so much more patient than I was.
Okay.
I did not give him grace whatsoever, even when he was a toddler.
Yeah.
When you should be giving your toddler grace, like, hey, he's 3 years old. Like, why don't you know this? Because I'm 3 years old, Dad. Like, that's the reason I don't know this, And so I still to this day have a lot of regrets, but I know what I can do for him. How I'm always going to be better to him is making me a better version of me every day.
Good. Yep.
That's how I'm going to repay it back to him and be a better father to him is working on that personal growth, being a better version of me. And he sees it now. Whereas before, like, he didn't really want to come and see me because drinking and that stuff was just a lot more important than he was.
Yeah. Would you say that energetically, before you understood what was going on, that you were sort of treating your son in a similar way to how the other kids treated you when you were growing up? Was that something that's ever connected?
I would.
Energetically, I don't mean exactly. Obviously, you're not bullying your son the same way.
No. I was very absent with him. Even when he was with me, I was very absent.
Okay, so you weren't even involved. You were never really there. I mean, you were there, but you were never really.
Exactly. Mentally and emotionally, I wasn't there.
Yeah.
Physically, I was there. Mentally, emotionally, I wasn't there for him.
Yeah. Okay.
There were so many things I could have done differently and better.
And now you are.
Actually, what excites me now is that I'm doing those things.
Okay.
And he went from, no, I don't want to spend the night at Daddy's house. Like, he's mean, to, hey, Dad, can we go ride bikes today? It's like,
and this has happened in the past. And this has happened like in the past 2 or 3 months, or has it been a little longer than that?
It's gotten a lot better in the last year.
That's awesome.
Especially after Aya, but
yeah.
But now, especially after the ceremonies, it's not more of a, hey, Dad's getting a lot better. Like, it's more of a, hey, this is my dad. He's almost forgot about everything that's happened in the past.
Yeah, he's a kid.
He still remembers certain things.
Yeah.
Hey, Daddy, remember when you put the hole in the wall in front of me?
Mm-hmm.
Remember when you punched that hole in the wall right in front of me? Which breaks my heart. But,
of course, yeah.
Or remember that time when I was scared and I was crying and you sent me to my room because you didn't, and He's like, yeah, I remember. But he doesn't do that so much anymore. Like, it's more like he starts crying and I hold him,
Oh,
or like, hey, he starts crying. It's like, hey, let's go ride bikes. Let's go get on our razors and race
yeah,
down the road, and let's go
yeah,
for a walk. Let's do
yeah.
something. And it really makes him happy.
That's cool.
Yeah.
How about your parents? How has that relationship changed or evolved or adapted, or is it sort of similar?
The relationship with my parents has gotten a lot better. They're pretty Nancy Reagan conservatives when it comes to like drugs. And I don't know if they're very supportive of it, but I don't think they see the benefits of it, because they're kind of stuck in the mentality that a drug is a drug is a drug. They're all bad. They don't, and maybe they do. Maybe I'm just like, maybe they do. I mean, but my kind of interpretation is that they don't. My dad's like, yeah, go for it, buddy. I hope, hopefully it works. But kind of the tone I read is like, yeah, okay, whatever, dude.
Yeah.
So, but I mean, they're very educated people. And I think especially my dad is getting really on board with it, but he's still kind of in a place. But our
Yeah. I mean,
relationship in general.
I'm assuming they're what, 60s, 70s? Yeah. So, I mean, they've been propagandized their entire life, even
Yeah,
more than people in their 30s, 40s, and 50s have, for
exactly.
sure.
Yeah.
I know my father reminds me every time I go home, even though I have a job working for a cannabis company, I did here in Arizona where it's state legal. That's the same as Colorado. He reminded me that cannabis is legal all the time. I'm like, yeah, I know, but I'm getting paid for it and I'm making money and I'm helping people. And he's like,
Yeah.
doesn't matter. It's illegal. And I was like, all right,
Yeah.
just don't worry about it.
All right.
So,
Yeah.
okay. So you have gone from a drinking, drugging of some
Mhm.
sort, angry biker,
Yeah.
to you, with the help of what started as friends, first
Yeah.
friends, to how would you describe yourself now? Like, what kind of guy are you? Are you a loving, supportive father? Are you an attentive business owner who loves being a dad? Are you a great husband? Like, how do you sort of internally describe yourself now?
Well, so I would say all of the above, but
Okay.
I feel calm.
Calm.
I went
Okay.
from chaos to calm.
Okay.
And once I started feeling this calmness, everything started to align. Like
Yeah.
all my thoughts and my
Yeah.
energy started to align.
Yeah.
And that's what's allowing me to be a better father, a
Okay.
better husband, an
Okay.
attentive business owner, is the fact that I went from chaos to calm. Now everything's aligning to where like I need to go. And that's kind of how I'm feeling.
I
Yeah,
like that. Chaos to calm. I really, really like that. So basically, it's just allowing you to make decisions that you always would have made had you been able to hear your brain or see through all the stuff that you're going through. So,
exactly.
yeah.
And I do want to say this, so nobody thinks I'm plagiarizing. So what got me to going into the ketamine treatments is I was in a really bad spot, and I read this article in NPR called "From Chaos to Calm," and it was about ketamine treatments, basically used with people just like me.
Yep.
Kind of petty crime,
Yep.
alcoholism, like this type of stuff. So the name of the article was from chaos to calm, but that's a term now that I use. It's not a trademark term, but it's a term I use now. Is I went from chaos to calm, just like this guy in this article.
That is cool. I wonder, would be kind of fun. I wonder if you could contact them and ask them to interview you about it, because that would be something. People like content. So I don't know. I would say, hey, could we ask your wife? Because she apparently can do anything. So you should ask your wife if she can get you into NPR to do a follow-up type of thing on that, because that'd be kind of fascinating. And since you're very comfortable on camera, that'd be fantastic. You might like that. I've actually seen it right now. So it came out, Chaos to Calm. That was an article on June 4th, 2018, by a guy named John Hamilton. It's pretty cool. So that's really fantastic.
It's a good read too, if you get a chance to read it.
I'm going to as soon as we're done. Okay. So you're not doing regular integration calls anymore from Ceremony. That has sort of passed. What are you doing to stay in yourself? Are you have a workout regimen? Do you have a meditation regimen? Is there anything you're doing regularly to sort of keep you regulated and grounded?
A lot of meditate. So I do active meditation. So I don't run, but I go and walk 3, 4, 5, sometimes 10 miles a day. I have a ton of walking trails around my house in Colorado. Being beautiful is kind of nice. So that's kind of what I'm doing now. And I do see a therapist once a week as well. But now, so I'm going through the HHP program now to do this ceremony in Peru. And so with HHP, they have 3 personal coach meetings coaching meetings, 3 group integration of medical, and then afterwards the same thing. So it's just all kind of stretching out together.
Very cool. I wonder, do you know where you're going in Peru?
Tarapoto.
I've heard of that.
Tarapo. Well, that's the name of the town. It's like the gateway to the Amazon or Monte Picchu.
Oh, so it's down south by, down by, yeah, okay. I know. I
Well,
know.
so you have Lima, and then it's a 2-hour plane ride. It's basically northeast
Okay.
of Lima.
Okay.
The place is called La Medicina. I can never pronounce. My Spanish is horrible.
Yep.
It's basically the medicine in English.
La Medicina.
Yeah, that's it. That's
okay.
it. Yeah. Yeah. That's the
Yeah,
name
my
of
Spanish isn't great either, but
Yeah.
I learned. I got by when I was in South America.
Yeah,
so
I'm working on it.
Yeah. Okay, so that's pretty cool. So you've got regular stuff going on. Are you doing any microdosing, any supplements, any sort of food related things that are going with this, or are you just sort of eating well and that type of
I
thing?
got my dieta, so like I'm not doing as of a couple of weeks ago, I'm not doing beef or pork, a lot of chicken, fish, rice. I'm cutting out caffeine slowly. I'm not doing any kind of psychedelics, microdosing right now, just because of the ceremony. They suggest not to do it.
Yeah, highly recommend going as clean as possible.
Yeah, I'm not taking any kind of antihistamines or anything like that. So, yeah, being pretty clean.
Cool.
As of right now,
cool.
yeah.
Very cool. All right. So one last question, and I'll talk about it for a little bit, so you have some time to think about it. Say you could speak to either a younger version of yourself, or you met someone like you right now, but you 2-3 years ago, before you had the help that you had now. Do you think, or what would you say to them, knowing that you couldn't just tell them what to do because they wouldn't listen? Like we know that. What would you do, say, be? How would you want to help that person, assuming they wanted some help?
I think if I were talking to me, I would just, knowing me, and I'll just say, hang in there.
Okay.
And just hang in there. Keep your options open.
Okay.
Don't turn down options that don't seem appealing. Not everything has to be done through impulse. Like, take some time, like, slow down, think about stuff, be patient. But as far as with me, like, getting help, like, it was just something I had to do when I was ready to do it. Me 4 years ago, you wouldn't have been able, or 5-6 years ago, you wouldn't have been able to do this with me. Like, it would just been like, yeah, okay, dude, whatever, snake oil. Or like, hey, there's no help for me. I'm destined to live like Kurt Cobain. I'm going to get loaded until the day I die. That's just my fate. That's what the cards have for me. And just to have somebody to say, hey, just hang in there, man. Like, that's not the way it has to be. You need to live your reckless life for a little bit longer. I can see that, but just hang in there, man. Good things will happen.
Do you have any tips for veterans who are maybe enmeshed in the VA system that want some help that's maybe outside and not recommended by the VA? Or would you recommend IA Mission 22? What would you recommend that they check out? Or is there anything specific?
The first thing I would like to say is that I love how veterans have bonded together in the last couple of years to help other veterans, like with these like different organizations and retreats, and because they've realized that the VA isn't the answer, or a lot of times it's not the answer.
Full
Sometimes
answer.
it is,
yeah,
right?
It's not the full answer.
So what I would tell another veteran, just like, hey, I'm going to send you a list of these nonprofit organizations, and that's going to open up so many other doors to other nonprofits. Like, so maybe the list I send you isn't the one that you need, but you start contacting some of these organizations, they're going to refer you to other organizations, and they're going to refer. So it's just like this huge network. Get people introduced to that non-VA network of nonprofits is what I would do for another veteran. So yes, I would recommend, the Aya Mission, HHP, even Warrior Path and Warrior Week, which is not psychedelic. It's just it's a retreat. I went to Warrior Week, and that was like besides Aya, one of the most beneficial things I've done, because they break down your 36 different personality types, and then your Enneagram.
Enneagram or something like that.
Enneagram, yeah. So,
Enneagram,
and
yeah.
then it kind of teaches you exactly what those two things are and how they integrate, and how this is what motivates you. This is how you feel. These are your strongest personality traits. So it really like opens you up to like who you are. And then also having ayahuasca on board, or having that as a tool, it's just, man, the possibilities are endless.
Yeah. So I'm laughing because I, like you, 5 or 6 years ago, I'm about 10, 12 years ago for my start of my journey, is all the stuff you just said, I would have thought was absolute bullshit. I was like, that's crazy. An Enneagram, what the fuck is that going to do for me? Like, what am I do? A bunch of woo-woo stuff? Like, I wouldn't have believed in any of this stuff. And it's fascinating. Like, now I'm coming around. Like, I get it. I understand why this exists. Yeah. You just laughing at yourself, because a previous version of you never would have done any of these things.
It takes growth.
So,
it takes growth.
It does. And that's hard, because we're used to growing as kids when we have the space to do it. And as adults, we have to hold our own space for ourselves, which is really hard. And while maintaining employability and relationships and all that type of stuff.
Exactly.
Is there anything that you want to share that you're working on? Do you want to share your company, just in case someone's watching this and needs some fire mitigation in Colorado? Anything that you want to share at all?
Well, to all the vets out there, or to not just veterans, but to anybody that's experienced trauma in their life, just like I said, man, just be patient. If you're not ready for help now, the help's out there for you to go and get. But you're going to have to go and get it. Nothing happens by magic. You have to have that desire to go out there and help yourself, but it's there if you need it. As far as my company, it's Rocky Mountain Land and Fire. We do fire mitigation, land development. Even if you need us to come out and do a defensible land strategy, like a plan for the insurance companies, we can do that as well. We do have veteran benefits where we don't charge top dollar, because we believe that you don't need to do that. Like, I'm still making a profit, and I'm still getting the money I need to operate and to live a decent life without having to purge your wallet. So
I appreciate your time. So I will, now I'm talking to the people listening to this, I will include as many links as Andrew wants to share with me in the show description as we go through. So he may, Warrior Week and all that type of stuff. We'll have all that in there. And that's all I have. So we're just going to sit here and stare at the camera for about 5 seconds while I click stop, and then we can continue talking after that. So thank you very much, Andrew. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, my name is Tyler Hurst. You can find me at microdose.yoga or on this channel doing stuff like this. So, see you, everybody.
My biggest takeaway from that ceremony was I can identify different emotions. Like, I can identify what they are.
That's awesome.
I can identify love. I can identify anger. I can identify sadness. I can identify all these different emotions, and I know what they are. And once you can identify what they are, then you start mitigating your reactions to these emotions.
Yeah.
Because you know what they are. Like, you're not getting anger and love confused. You're not getting sadness and happy confused. Like,